Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Consistently Good podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Cunningham, and I'm pumped to bring this episode to you guys. Today, we're talking about team building, and we're talking about teamwork, but not just teamwork in sort of generic sense, right? Which is, oh, hey, I have this workout to do, or I have this project to do. I was wondering if you could help me out with it or come and give me an assist. Listen, that's really, really fantastic. And camaraderie and companionship, maybe in a one-off task or a one-off endeavor, or maybe a series of endeavors, is really, really helpful. It's a meaningful part of everything that we do when we're pursuing excellence or trying to achieve a goal. But what I'm going to be referring to today, and I'm going to be talking to you guys today about, is actually team building, like actually building a team, an organization, a formalized group that has their oars in the water, pulling in the same direction toward a goal or a set of goals or a, shall we say, sort of a bucket of goals that are all relatively similar, where people can work in beautiful concert together to go and achieve whatever it is. And obviously, this is a running podcast. And obviously, this is a sports-based podcast. This is a performance, endurance sports focused podcast. But frankly, this could be applicable to just about anything. I mean, whether it's an accounting firm, whether it is, the pot holder knitters of America, whatever it is you want to do, this is what we're here to talk about. But I'm going to talk about it obviously in the context of performance sports, running specifically, because that's my background, right? Both in participating on teams that were both maybe not so good and were really good, and then coaching teams and building teams, and how I went about doing it, and how globally I think people could go about thinking about doing it, not necessarily trying to just mimic or emulate specifically what I did. I don't claim to be the grand poobah in that respect, but I have a lot of experience, 24 years of doing this, put a lot of thought, a lot of blood, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, a lot of hand-wringing, and at the end of the day, a whole lot of really, really emotional satisfaction and a lot of gratification that comes from both the humanness of the interactions with people and then celebrating in collective success, celebrating individual success in a collectivist environment. And that's what I really want to talk about to you today. Now, when we talk about teams and we talk about teamwork, there is this push-pull that I don't think maybe we think about a lot. The United States, and I'm speaking about this in the context of the United States to some degree, we really, really, for instance, romanticize our rugged individualism, right? Now, for a lot of you young whippersnappers, y'all don't remember the Winston tastes good like a cigarette should commercials they used to run. And it was always, or a Marlboro man, right? It's a guy out, in Montana alone riding his horse, right? Now, obviously, I'm not advocating cigarette smoking, but my point is it leaned into those ads, and many of you may not recall them, but many probably do. This rugged individualism, this sort of lone wolf mentality that's quite romanticized and frankly is quite useful and has served some really, really good purposes in the United States. Pioneers, right? That person was a pioneer, we like to say. Well, what were pioneers? These were some crazy individuals who decided that they were going to leave the East Coast and they were going to head west in a covered wagon, right? It's sort of, there's this rugged, like, I'm going to go it on my own. I'm going to strike out into unincorporated areas of life, not just literal unincorporated areas like the pioneers did, covered wagons, going through the Rocky Mountains, going out west, but in the proverbial unincorporated spaces that we operate in, right? And what is an unincorporated space that we might be identifying in the proverbial sense, so to speak? Anything where maybe people haven't tread before, but where we recognize, hey, maybe we can do something here with this. Oh, there's a bunch of people who are interested in this, right? And so what you have is you have rugged individualism, but you also have the notion that teamwork and a collective work ethic, a collective sort of ethos, so to speak, and we refer to the sort of swell of momentum. A lot of times we talk about it in terms of, like, shall we say, a rising tide raises all boats. We've heard that, right? The tide goes up, all the individual boats all go up. This is teamwork, right? What I find is that we can combine the concepts of sort of this individualism, this pioneerism that has been one of the greatest societal assets I think that we have had for a couple of hundred years in this country, with the clear affinity that we have for our teams and teamwork, right? But, a lot of times we're at a crossroads. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about the famous poem from Robert Frost. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere, ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. And you have to ask yourself, what roads have not been traveled, but what unincorporated areas, unvisited areas, unattended to areas in our existence or in our lives or in our spheres need to be attended to, and how can we address these issues? I'm sort of reminded by the way some of the most famous teams that we know of have operated as sort of pioneers, lone wolves in their industries, but did it obviously as recognizable teams. Now, you could say what you want, and I know all of you Redskins fans and Packers fans are about to laugh at me, but let's look at the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm talking about early 1990s Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones. This guy comes in and literally has changed the way the NFL operates now, from a marketing standpoint, from a sponsorship standpoint. Keep in mind, the NFL itself sort of had corporate partners, and they wanted everybody to partner with those. And Jerry said, no, I want to sign contracts with whoever I want to sign contracts with from a sponsorship standpoint, et cetera. And he was able to get some major changes done in the NFL that then inured to the benefit of the other 30 plus teams in the NFL today, right? And then through player development and investment in players, and some really, really crazy, wild trades that have been made famous to this day and are the subject of ESPN 30-30, for instance, right? ESPN 30 for 30s are not produced, they're not made about people who are uninteresting, who are not individuals, or situations that were not individually compelling, because without something compelling, why would you produce anything? The fact that, we see that there are Netflix documentaries, on, the Dallas Cowboys, on the Miami Hurricanes, the U, right? These were very individualistic, pioneering programs that proceeded in with the framework of teams. The Dallas Cowboys changed. They changed the NFL, and specifically it was Jerry Jones who changed it. The same thing can be said for Al Davis and the Oakland Raiders way back prior to Jerry Jones ever coming to the Dallas Cowboys. Now, you could, late in his career and late in his life, I mean, people had what they had to say, right, about these polarizing figures. But the reality is the Oakland Raiders and Al Davis and the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones changed the face of the NFL. Look at AFC Ajax, the great Dutch soccer club, okay? They invested in their youth programs like no other soccer clubs in Europe, to the point where they literally became sort of the template for success in growing your own talent and then winning multiple European championships, Ajax did. And then that sort of became the blueprint for how some of the other great clubs in Western Europe sort of then viewed player development and all that. And it was an individual approach that was different than what other people had done. They recognized a space, they decided to go into it, and then the team was built, okay, around recognizing this need or recognizing these changes that need to be addressed, these unincorporated areas that you can wander into, whether it's marketing, whether it's player development, And they said, this is the way we're going to do it. But it has to go from theoretical, it has to go from sort of an idea to sort of the practical. Practically, how are you going to go about doing this? First of all, without being relevant, without establishing some relevant need and then creating a relevant team or a relevant group, I believe that your team, your company, your group, whatever it is destined for, at best, mediocrity, at worst, abject failure. Now, what I'm saying is you recognize a need. And I think that's one of the first thing that you have to do is say, do we need an elite marathon team in Austin, Texas? We're at a high school and we're coaching, or we've been asked to coach at a high school. Is there a need and to win in cross country running, win in track and field, right? So what you do is the first thing you have to look at is there a need for this group? Is there a need for this team? Not just, I want to create one out of thin air, right? But that thin air has to be filled by actual particulate and matter that can fill this void. And the particulate and the matter, of course, is the group of people who have a certain like-mindedness, who have similar thought processes on what they want to accomplish. And you take pieces and you say, here's the need, you put it together, and then you figure out how to go and address the need. All right? Now, after addressing that there's a need in your area, maybe you have a whole bunch of runners, right? Who individually show up, run a race here, run a race there. One runs from this park, one runs from this suburb, and you start noticing, hey, similar times, similar mindsets. Maybe there's some connectedness there via social media. However it may be done, you say, hey, maybe there's a way for all of these individuals to come together, because in our local area, when people start saying, I wish I had a team to run with, or I wish I had training partners, not just on a one-off basis. Hey, buddy, I've got a big workout tomorrow. Could you come out at 6 a.m. and hold some gels for me and hit some segments on my long run? Hey, that's fantastic. I'm talking about on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, picking races, doing workouts together. Maybe the workout's coming from a singular source or a singular set of sources where everybody agrees this is what we're going to do. This is what I'm talking about. Is there a need here? Okay. And then what you do is you look at this and you say, okay, what is the actual appetite, right? What is the appetite for doing this? Is there an actual appetite for excellence? Is there an appetite for pushing the boundaries, perhaps of what we thought might be possible? Is there an appetite for taking that glass ceiling and just see if we can just push it up through a collectivist approach, through a unified approach? And is there an appetite for achieving excellence? Is there an appetite, a yearning, so to speak, to become something better than just mundane, mediocre, or worse yet, something better than bad, something better than, frankly, embarrassing? And I have some anecdotes that are going to address those in a very, very real sense. So identify your need, assess the appetite for getting this done, and you are in the beginning stages of building out a team. When I got to St. Michael's Catholic Academy here in Austin, and my wife started coaching there, Angelique started coaching in the spring of 2004, right? And then when we took over the cross-country programs, what did we do? We recognized that there was a need. We need to get this program where we want it, right? And there's no reason for a bunch of healthy, athletic, committed, dedicated, hardworking people to be able to achieve something together if they can't do it. And so we looked and we thought to ourselves, this is a fix that we need. in our opinion. The school community needs it. We can get this done. It's part of the overall track and field and cross country program. And so then what you do is you talk to the young men and you talk to the young women at practice, and you go to meets and you go to workouts. You start assessing the appetite. Do y'all want to be good? Do you enjoy getting beaten? Do you enjoy getting your brains beaten in race after race, week after week, month after month, season after season? Well, no, coach. No, coach. We want to be like those guys. We want to be like those young women from XYZ high school, right? And so you assess the appetite, and that's what we did. We assessed the appetite. Do you guys have the appetite? Do you ladies have the appetite to go from being irrelevant to becoming relevant? Listen, the appetite for relevance is virtually insatiable, and the appetite for relevance is very, very real. And I think that it can be soul-filling. I think that it is good for mental health. I think it is good for people coming up behind us, whether it is people who are just following us, maybe, through the turnstiles of life, or through parenting, right? I think that seeing other people do relevant things and being relevant in a positive way, and being relevant in a way that's wholesome, and being relevant in a way that's healthy, and being relevant in a way that can be inspirational and uplifting to other people to say, oh, I can. Being relevant is one of the central things that I think that the human condition is centered around. And I think, frankly, a lot of people yearn for it. Don't just be in the potholder knitters of America. Be the best potholder knitter in America. Win the potholder knitters of Calaveras County competition. I don't even know if that is. I think it was a frog jumping thing, right? Anyway, I've gotten far afield here. But the reality of it is, relevance matters. How do we seek to be relevant? We want a group to be relevant. We've analyzed that there's a need. Is there an appetite to become something more than irrelevant, to be something more than mundane? Let's achieve greatness. Let's try to achieve being above average at whatever it is that we do, right? And so when we were at the high school, you take a bunch of kids who didn't know what shoes to wear, didn't know when to wear them, didn't know even how to dress properly for a race, didn't know the difference between good and bad, but had some inkling that what was going on wasn't the best, but let's figure out what good is. You address all these things, and then you take an irrelevant existence, a haphazard, scattered, sort of thrown together sort of approach, and suddenly with this collectivism and this identification of a need, this identification of a significant appetite to fix this, all of a sudden things get rolling, right? The same thing happened when I got into the marathon space, when I was coaching a marathon. I didn't just wake up coaching the marathon at the beginning of my career. I didn't coach a marathon in 2001 or 2005 or 2010. I didn't. Coaching at the high school level. I was coaching milers, 2 miles, cross-country runners. I was worried about trying to get, kids college scholarships. That's what I was doing. That was my coaching space. Loved it. Still doing it. But, 2018, late 2018, I get approached by an ex-athlete of mine. Says, hey, let's try a marathon. Goes out, runs unbelievable. Finishes top 10 in a gold label marathon debut. And then suddenly somebody else comes and says, will you help me? And I said, sure, I'll help you, right? I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I've got a couple things figured out here, right? Despite my bad accent, I'm not completely unintelligent. I can figure this stuff out. We're running down the road. We're going to be okay, right? Somebody else ran well. And somebody else said, okay, will you help me? And then what happened is I started recognizing a need. And then I started asking them, do we have an appetite, right? No pun intended, batted around some ideas. Voila, boom, Bat City Track Club gets formed fall of 2021. Fast forward to 2024, we had 5 people qualify for the United States Olympic trials. And all of a sudden, it's like you go from one runner standing on the side of the street, two runners standing on the side of the street. Suddenly you recognize a need. Suddenly you recognize the appetite to get something going. And then lo and behold, 36 months later, you've got a roster of 30, 35 athletes. You got 5 people in the United States Olympic trials. And boy, I'll tell you what, that's relevance, people. That's relevance. And it's so fulfilling for the individuals within the team, for the individuals within the group, for the individuals within an organization to carve out a piece of individual relevance, bolstered by this tide that raised, in that case, those 5 individual boats, right? That made it to that really, really, frankly, in most respects, really, really elite level. And it's fun. And it feels wonderful. And we've got good humans doing hard things, investing in excellence, right? Same thing happened back in high school. Ended up winning a state championship in 2008. And it was a tapestry of ineptitude 24 months prior. And then you go and then you win the state track championship in the spring. Then you go the next year and you win another state track championship. And you realize that suddenly you identified the void. You found out that the kids had an incredible appetite for becoming relevant and achieving excellence. And then you just go to work. You take your bare hands and you take this sort of amoebic, faceless blob of clay and you form it into something absolutely wonderful. And you do it collectively, and you realize that everybody there is in the same boat with a set of oars in the left hand and the right hand, and everybody's just pulling in sync. We've all seen these regattas, right? Especially in the Northeast, but even right here in the lake in Austin, it's just unbelievable. The symmetry and the synchronization. That's what I'm talking about. Everybody, oars in the water, pull. Oars in the water, pull. We got to make sure that we're always pulling in the same direction or in at least an agreed upon similar direction, right? And that's okay, right? Identify your goals. That's the third thing, right? You've already identified that there was a need. You then identified the individuals who have the appetite and that there's enough of an appetite to do this. And then you got to say, okay, we can't just say, all right, well, we want to be good and we have some vague idea of being good and we want to be good. Well, at what exactly? Identify the what, right? And you can't have a goal to just generically sort of be good at everything, because then when you try to be good at everything, you water everything down and then you aren't good at anything. It's just like messaging. It's just like marketing. You know, if you're trying to market something to everyone, you're going to end up marketing to nobody, right? It's the same thing with goal setting. You have to agree on not necessarily one singular goal, although that could be the case, right? Like BPN, be the greatest supplement company in the United States, right? That is a goal, right? And I'm not pretending to speak for the company exactly, but what I'm saying is that's a goal. Be the best, right? But you can have a set of goals that are all interrelated. Some of which are sort of tethered very closely together, that are in the same sort of bucket of accomplishments, right? Like qualify for the U.S. championships in the half marathon, get some people in the U.S. Olympic trials in the marathon, have some people get into the elite fields in some IAAF gold label races, and get somebody into the United States track and field championships in the 10,000 meter run, hit the U.S. standard for that. Listen, those are all different goals. You got a 10K goal, you have a marathon goal, you have a different marathon event that you want to run in, but they're all in the same bucket of goals, which is running races at an incredibly high level. And those are the goals. And everybody can still take those oars, put them in the water, and can be rowing toward those goals. So you have your void that you're trying to fill. You find your appetite for achieving excellence, and then you identify your goals. Now, what is not a goal? Be better. That's not a goal. You might think it is. But being better is not a goal. Being better is what happens when you are engaged in the process of trying to achieve a finite or relatively finite goal or set of goals. So being better is simply the product of your work. That's not actually a goal. Running faster. I have people tell me, I say, well, what's your goal? Well, I just want to get faster. Hey, I appreciate that. And that's okay. No crime committed. The sheriff ain't coming down here to handcuff you and throw you on the hood of the car for having that be your goal. All right. But that's not a goal. Getting faster is the byproduct of hard work. The conduit through which we achieve excellence is running workouts, running them faster, right? Getting better at the sport of running. And then when you show up to a race, then you have a goal that you're trying to hit. So getting faster, once again, is simply a byproduct of your pursuit of excellence. It's not the goal in and of itself. Having fun. Listen, I'm all for having fun. Hell, I'm having a lot of fun right now just talking to you guys, okay? But having fun is not the goal of this podcast, okay? I would like for people to believe that I'm having fun, that I'm passionate, that I'm fired up about sitting here doing this podcast, which I am, but that's not the goal. The goal is to get a meaningful message to you that can resonate, that can somehow, even if incrementally, positively impact your day, positively impact your life, either for this week, this month, or maybe longer than that. That's the goal of this podcast, right? Not for me to have fun. Now, I hope my guys that are helping me produce this and my guys who are editing this and the BPN family and everybody watching this can see me having fun. That's great, but that ain't the goal, guys. All right. So make sure that you understand that getting better, running faster, having fun are the byproducts of chasing the goal, but those aren't the goals. A goal is win the state title at St. Michael's Catholic Academy. We did that. Did the boys get faster? They got faster. Did the boys get better, not just at running, but get better about self-confidence, get better about achieving self-actualization, get better about being there for each other and being scaffolding for each other emotionally when somebody's not having a great day? They got better at all that, right? But that wasn't the goal. The goal was to win, okay? It's sports, all right? We got winners and we losers, and we've got winners and losers in life, okay? Your goal is to win. Your goal is to win selling supplements. Win at it, right? In other words, be good at it and have achievable markers, right? Not make a good tasting gel. Well, that's great, right? But the goal is to achieve some measure of relevance in the industry that BPN operates in, achieve some level of relevance that Bat City Track Club operates in the elite marathoning space, in elite road racing space. My high school teams that Angelique and I coach achieve some relevance in our division and in our organization in the state of Texas in trying to win trophies, medals, championships, and then have that incredible feeling that the community has when something's just going so well and it bleeds into everything. Okay? When we got, to St. Michael's, for instance, in 2006, the school record was 10:47 in the 3,200 meters. By the time we got to 2010, right, 4 years later, in the spring of 2010, the 3,200 2-mile school record was 9:02. Oh, we got better, right? But what was achieved there was state championships, right? The mile record went from 4:48 to 4:11. Well, what was achieved? Well, yeah, got better, had fun along the way, but that 4:11 won a massive race down in the Houston area. That young man ended up having the third fastest time in the entire state of Texas, right, that season. This is before carbon-plated racers and all these wacky things that we have technologically now 15, 16 years later, right? So when you look at achieving the goals, you have to then say, okay, well, how do we go about achieving the goal, right? So we've identified the goal. How did they actually get there, though? How did we get people in the Olympic trials? How do you get to be the best supplement company in America? How do you have the best potholder knitting group in America? How do you do it? The The fourth thing is whoever is trying to organize your team, build a team. In our case, it was Angelique and me at the high school level, Bat City. I recognize this and I try to do this is you better have an air of credibility. You better. People will sniff this out in a heartbeat. Listen, you can post the fanciest reel. You can go out and you can buy the fanciest website anybody could build. You can give the most fiery speeches and the go get them and run through a wall and all this other stuff. But unless you have an air of credibility, unless you have some peer-reviewed approaches to trying to achieve what it is you say you want to achieve, you are destined to be sniffed out, and then you are destined to end up having what could possibly be a failed approach at trying to develop something, even if you correctly identified the need, you correctly identified the appetite, you collectively identified what the goal is. You better be self-assured enough, or the group of people doing it better have assurances that they have the financial competence to do it if it's a financial institution, that they have the tech savvy if it's a tech firm, that they have the coaching chops to be able to build out a team when the promises are made of championships, when the promises are made of qualifying for major marathons, when the promises are made of qualifying for the Boston Marathon, if that's what the team's goals are. You better know what you're doing, and you have to be very, very careful in assessing your own confidence. We always laugh you see these memes, proceed today with the confidence of a 4-year-old wearing a Batman suit, right? Well, that's great, but Batman better be able to do Batman things. Superman better be able to fly, right? And Spider-Man better be able to shoot webs out of his palm and go and rescue women from, fifth floors of buildings. Because if all you are is a guy in a Batman suit and a Spider-Man suit, but you can't do Batman things and Spider-Man things, you're going to get sniffed out, right? And so you got to be careful there. Now, when I say peer-reviewed approaches, what I mean is in the coaching world, here's the unfortunate reality. But I don't really know if it's unfortunate. I think it's quite fair. To a large degree, you are who you've coached. You are what you've done in running. You are who you've inspired. You are who you've mentored. You are who you have cavorted and cajoled and cheered and sweated with and bled with to get them to be able to get where they want. You are what your track record says, right? We always say, our coaches always say, you get to the end of the season, if your football team's 2-10, people say, well, you are where your record says you are. Listen, man, we are in a results-oriented world. And I think that being comfortable with that is okay. I'm actually okay with that. I'm okay with it being a results-oriented world. At the end of the day, you're either getting it done or you're not. And that's why you got to be careful at first, right? Because everybody has the first runner they've ever coached. Everybody has the first team they've ever tried to build. Everybody has the first time they've ever tried to do anything. And then you establish excellence by getting people to believe and then proving that you have competence. Competence typically needs to precede excellence. Grit, determination, stick-to-itiveness, work ethic, experience, whether it's coaching chops or otherwise, must all precede excellence, okay? And so, make sure that you've got expertise, and it could be just leadership experience. Listen, that's part of competence. Establish that you've led before, right? That's why, there's a lot of leadership skills that are completely transferable between disciplines, whether it's cycling, whether it's running, whether it's making supplements, right? Leadership is a transferable skill, but once again, it's peer-reviewed leadership skill. In other words, what was other people's assessment of the job you did as a leader? Think about it. It's why we have job recommendations, guys. That's the reason why people say, well, he comes or she comes highly recommended, right? Nobody wants to go, I want somebody who's really, really lowly recommended. I mean, I guess there have been some outliers and there's been some situations where maybe that's the exception to the rule. But generally speaking is nobody wants people who give somebody roundly, almost consistently negative reviews, right? That means your peer-reviewed level of competence may not be that great. So proceed with confidence based on what you've achieved, the empiric measures of success in whatever arena it is you're in, right? And then come to it with an air of credibility, and you have a chance to team build, program build, company build, organization build. You got to be the Pied Piper. You got to be the Pied Piper to get people to follow you, but you better be able to play a really, really sweet melody on that pipe. Okay? Now, this is just some stuff. This is my editorializations. Take it or leave it. Okay? Stay away from cliche. I understand that cliches are cliches for a reason, because a lot of times they get traction because there's some eternal truth maybe that they elucidate. Cliche is cliche because somebody said it and it appears to be attractively reproducible and it rolls off the tongue nicely. Maybe it makes people feel good, but is it actually practical, right? And so when I say stay away from cliche, stuff like, people say, well, we want to be excellent, but we can do it any way we want. For cat lovers of the world, forgive me, but we have this saying, there's a bunch of different ways to skin a cat. Listen, I'm not in favor of, skinning Garfield or a little Smokey or whoever your pet is. I'm not, okay? I promise. But my point is this. People say, well, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. And I always tell people, like I've said before, maybe, but everybody's got to use a sharp knife, right? We have to use sharp knives to cut through the baloney, all right, to get to the marrow of what it is we're trying to use. So you got to have a sharp knife. Ain't nobody, proverbial or literally, who's dull going to be able to get this done. So we're all doing it in similar way. So let's stay away from the cliche of, well, there's a bunch of different ways to skin a cat. It's like, well, you better make sure that what you're doing is you're operating with established parameters of excellence in your field, in your industry, in your area, even if you're treading into, like I referred to earlier, those unincorporated areas or an unfilled spot, so to speak, in the arena into which you're wading, but there's still sort of that fat part of the bell curve where you got to make sure that your methodology is endorsed in a way that is scientifically adept, scientifically supported, that is peer reviewed, whether it is, an approach to looking at supply chain dynamics in the southeastern part of the United States for Go Gels, right? You got to make sure that you know what you're doing here. And so that's the next thing that I always sort of look at is when we say, well, I don't care what other people are doing. If I just worry about myself, everything's going to be okay. If we just worry about what we're doing, we're going to be fine. I take issue with that. I do. Once again, it's about understanding the waters into which you are wading. It's about respecting the groundwork that's been laid, that's respecting the roadways and the pathways and the things that have been laid prior to you. When you start wading into the weeds, when you start wading into the water, make sure you can hike through the weeds and make sure that you can swim through the waters that you're in. Okay? So have your periscope up to know what's happening in the industry, in the space, or in the world, specifically, for instance, in distance running. Understand, hey, we want to go and we want to be the best marathon team in the southeastern part of the United States. Well, how do we deal with the fact that it's hot in Austin? Who's training in the heat? Who is analyzing how to adjust paces for heat, looking at heart stroke volume? How is plasma volume affected by training in the heat? What are the negative psychological impacts possibly of training for prolonged periods in the heat? What's everybody else doing? I'm not going to say, well, I don't care what anybody else is doing. We're just going to do it here. Well, to some degree, I don't care from the standpoint of I don't want to entertain the idea necessarily that it can't be done. Let's go and let's look and see maybe who is doing it, maybe slightly dissimilarly, but in a way where I can glean something from it. Understand how much lactate threshold training to do. Understand how much volume is typically needed on the fat part of the bell curve as an elite marathoner to be able to get this done. In other words, care enough about what other people are doing to know that what you're doing isn't so askew of what is prudent, of what is scientifically supportable, of what is empirically worked in the past, that you're literally setting your team and the individuals within that team up for failure. Understand the waters into which you are wading so that you can then go to the unincorporated corner of the pool or the bayou or the river that you're wading into and say, we're going to have a great team over here. But you still got to be able to swim, right? Now, one of the things that I think we have to be careful with when we talk in cliche is understanding that it can come across, this is my editorialization, okay? I just need to throw that out there. Sometimes it can come across as a little intellectually lazy, right? Where you just throw out zingers once again, right? And if they don't land, if they don't hit home, or they don't make a lot of sense in the context of what you're doing, you risk losing. I think you risk losing sort of this swell of momentum where everybody's like, okay, let's go. Let's do this together. Collectively, we're going to go do it. You lose a little bit if you speak a lot in cliche. I think sometimes we watch interviews with coaches in press conferences, and people refer to as, quote, coach speak. That's what we mean when they just throw something out there that may be a little intellectually lazy because they either don't want to answer a question or really don't have any new and creative and intellectually sort of rigorous ways of identifying patterns and problems and discussing the dynamics of a practice or a game or a race that just happened. So you just throw out just coach speak, just isms that sort of don't hit home, that are sort of overused. So be careful with that. I'm just saying, just be careful with that. Okay. Be honest with people. Do not lie. Do not lie to your mentees. Do not lie to employees. Do not lie to colleagues. And it's not like disgusting overt lies. That's not what I'm talking about. Maybe I should characterize it as exaggerations or maybe mischaracterizations of what is possible, what is truth. Do not tell somebody, well, can I go and break the world record if I only run 4 days a week? Don't say yes, because that's probably not true. And then the problem is you will lose people, you will lose athletes, you will lose mentees, you will lose employees, you will lose the trust if you tell them something that you say is true or could happen, and then it really can't, and then it doesn't, and suddenly you start losing. You lose credibility. You have to be careful not to lose trust, because without credibility, without trust, then this beautiful sort of concert, this beautiful dynamic that you've got, this symbiosis that you've got amongst employees, between employees, from subordinates and superiors, etc., it begins to break down. It begins to break down. So when somebody says, Coach, if I train my butt off, can I break 4 minutes in the mile? This is a true story. And I looked at the young guy and I says, I really don't think so, son. I don't think so. And it's not me confusing realism and pessimism, which I think that we really have to be careful with in our culture. We tend to say can't when we probably need to get rid of the apostrophe T a lot in this day and age. I'm serious. And that's what this collectivist approach can do, is we could take that glass ceiling and raise it by going, no, you can. But this young guy comes to me and he had never broken 6 in a mile, right? And I says, hey, let's try to run 5:30 first. Well, let's try to break 5 minutes first. I said, don't set yourself up where my goal is to run a 3:59 mile when at the time only maybe 4, 5 high schoolers in the history of United States distance running. I mean, you had your Jim Rines, you had your Marty LaCour, you had your Alan Webb. I mean, that was about it at the time, right? So I said, hey, let's try to make 6 minutes to the mile. If I told the young guy, oh, absolutely, 100% you can, well, then when it didn't happen, and it did not, but he did achieve some nice things, right? Running for me. But if it didn't happen, what does that say about me? It says that either one, I don't know what I'm doing. So the competence and the peer-reviewed competence that maybe I thought I had by telling a kid yes, maybe it wasn't there, but you lose trust. So don't lose trust. Really speak truths, but understand that you can push the audacious lines way out. We live on a ranch of talent, a ranch of possibilities. Let's make sure that we take that thing from a 10-acre ranch to a 100-acre ranch, and let's put the fences on the parameters of that big ranch and say everything out to those fences is possible, so you can still dream big, right? And tell people a lot is possible without then it being an untruth. Is that a nice way of saying lie? An untruth, right? Because it's never volitionally shall we say dishonest. I mean, people aren't volitionally just out there just lying to people. That's not what's happening. It's just understand maybe when you're exaggerating what's possible and it then starts becoming an impossibility and then you run some risk there. Okay? The difference between great teams and mediocre teams, all right, is smaller than the difference between great teams and bad teams. But also, the difference between great teams and other great teams is actually quite small. What you'll find is there's similar threads of leadership, competence, appetite for relevance, stick-to-itiveness to process, investment in process, investment in excellence. Those are all similar traits that are shared by great companies and great teams, right? We can talk about the subtle differences between them, and that's where you identify a need and then an appetite to then go and chase that, identify your goals to go and be different, differentiate yourself from that team, differentiate yourself from that supplement company, differentiate yourself from that law firm, that accounting firm, that grocery store chain, right? But understand the differences between the great ones are smaller than the differences between the great ones and the bad ones. I think that's probably pretty obvious, but I think that people don't understand that there's more commonality in people who are high achievers. There's commonality in organizations that achieve excellence, and leaning into those and having your periscope up and understanding what's happening with peers in your industry, chosen profession, chosen area of desired excellence is really, really important. When you're dealing with your people, and you're dealing with your mentees, and you're dealing with the people who you're collectively trying to go and chase these goals with, understand that you need to identify where the mountaintop is. And this is about goals, identifying them and chasing them. People need to understand where the peak is. They need to understand where the path to the peak is, and they need to understand where the flatbed truck is they need to hop on and when it's leaving base camp, right? There is room on the success bandwagon, and there should be room on the success bandwagon for every single person in your organization. And their individual success can then lead to the collective success. 5 people scoring a cross-country meet. You can have 3 great runners and 2 runners who are not very good, and you're not going to win that cross-country meet. If you have 5 people who are all in the realm of really, really solid, nobody who's extraordinary, but also nobody who's extraordinarily bad, you have a really good chance of winning. So understand that you can define the success of each individual in your organization, whether it's a videographer, whether it is a podcast editor, whether it is a community outreach designee, whether it is your chief of finance. Every single one of those people can have an individual definition of success. On a team, each runner can have an individual definition of success, right? when we won the state championship, we had boys that ran anywhere from, low 15s, mid 15s in a 5K up to the 16s, high 16s in a 5K, right? But each one of those young men understood their role as the number 4 runner, their role as the number 3 runner, the attempt to try to become the number 2 runner by going from the 4 runner, by getting better, but understanding that each individual success collectively then can lead to team success. You want to have a great quarterback, but the great quarterback better have some sure-handed receivers, or he's just a great quarterback who's going to be delivering balls that are going to be bouncing off of face masks, shoulder pads, and hands, right? Nobody wants to throw to Captain Brick hands, right? And so the individual receiver can be all Big 12. The quarterback can be first or second all-team Big 12. And then you have a chance collectively to have a great offense and to eventually succeed as a team. So identify each individual member's competence. Identify where that glass ceiling of success is. Inspire them through belief in you, through your peer-reviewed level of competence, to then raise that glass ceiling and let those individuals dream big, but not to the detriment of the collective goal. There's room for both, and it's absolutely beautiful to watch individuals blossom, to watch individuals almost tearfully joyful after doing something that he or she may have never perceived as possible. And then that raises the collective relevance of the team. It raises the collective recognizable achievements of the team. And that's the rising tide that's going to raise all the boats. They can adhere to the individual rugged determination, that individualism that we love so much in the United States, but do it within a team construct that benefits everybody. Success bleeds into success, which then bleeds into more success. Success, motivation, jubilant achievement begats success, motivation, and jubilant achievements, which then begats more success and more jubilance, premised in high achievement. But you've got to lead from the front, you've got to lead from the top, and you've got to lead with an air of credibility, and you've got to have clearly identifiable goals, or it will all fall flat. Worse yet, could fall apart. It's tough. It's not easy. But when there's resolve, when there's grit, when there's passion, great things can happen. It can be magical. Education. I don't think that it's helpful for one person to say, I've got all the secrets, trust me. Trust me. Just trust me. Just I don't owe you any explanations. Sometimes when we're rearing our children, because I said so is plenty good enough. But sometimes an explanation. I'm telling you to do this because blah, blah, blah. It's still not optional. I mean, it's compulsory. You're going to take the trash out. You're going to get your homework done by 8 p.m. You're going to, wash the dishes and load the dishwasher. You're going to show up to school on time. I mean, listen, why? Well, I'll explain to you why. I want you to do this because blah, 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 right? When it comes to running, go run this workout. Why are we doing this workout? If a coach or a mentor or a confidant or somebody who is charged with being the leader, being the coach, if a CEO tells you to do this, to some level or on some level, at some level, respectful discourse regarding the why, so that there can be education of the athletes or the subordinates, can really lead to faith, gratitude in leadership, loyalty, enhanced work ethic, enhanced desire to succeed because there's an understanding that this is a well-laid brick in a street that is going to lead to the promised land. And so educating my high school runners was really, really important. Educating runners who I coach now on why. Why are we running this pace? Well, because this is between aerobic threshold and lactate threshold, and we want to do this much because I think that we can really get some positive gains here from a physiologic standpoint that are going to allow you to achieve that goal. Oh, okay. Well, why do you have me tapering for this many days? Why are we running this kind of volume per week? Why aren't we doing hill repeats? Why are we doing hill repeats? Those are all very legitimate questions that should be asked, can be asked, and they better be able to be answered. If you can't, and this is some coaching advice right here, folks. This is what I tell some coaches. If you can't explain why every single meter that you're assigning to a runner is being run, find something else to do. You better know the why. You better have a well-formed opinion, and you better have a well-formed idea premised in the basics of physiology and the science of developing runners. Or once again, you're going to lose. But you take the ball and run with it when it comes to education. And not just educating just on the physiology of running, educating on the space. Hey, listen, in order to be able to get into the pro field at the New York Marathon, or in order to be able to get individualized bottles to run in the pro field at the California International Marathon, you're probably going to need to run this time. You're going to need to be able to ingest this many grams of carbohydrate. I need you to be able to educate people. Educate. All right? And be a student of what you're doing. Have some reverence, have some appreciation for the history. If you're a CEO of a company, appreciate what other great CEOs have done. Appreciate what other leaders and other pioneers in the industry have done, right? Being educated makes you well-rounded and really, really lends credibility. Understand who the greats are in the marathoning space if you're trying to coach great marathoners. Understand the pioneers in the sport, the leaders, the Frank Shorters, the Jeff Galloways, the Alberto Salazars, the Joan Benoit Samuelsons. Really, really know the space you're in. And it's also just fun. It's just so enjoyable. It's just so fulfilling to sort of understand the lore and understand sort of maybe the soap operas and the ins and the outs of the cool factoids that are the history of what it is that you're trying to enhance in that unincorporated space where you've decided that you want to set up shop, right? Education. Make sure everybody's educated, knowing the why. For people to generally understand why you're making these decisions, or generally understand why we're doing this workout, or generally understand why the team or the group or the company is headed this direction versus that, that's empowerment. That is not ceding authority. That is not giving away your level of being, quote unquote, in charge. That is not what's doing. It makes you more credible. It makes you more believable. It is empowering the people who are collectively part of this organization, who are all rowing in the same direction. It makes you more powerful and more powerful and more powerful. Knowledge in the pursuit of excellence has a better chance of allowing your people to achieve greatness. I'll stand on that. Okay. This is a couple of weird things that I'm going to say that people are going to go, he said what? Be willing to play favorites. Yeah, I'm going to let that sit for a long, pregnant pause there. Be willing to play favorites. Let me understand what it is I'm saying. If people exemplify what it is you are trying to do organizationally, from a work ethic, from an achievement, from an adherence to process, from an irreverence, from a respect standpoint of what you're trying to do and what the organization is trying to do and what the individuals within that organization or team are trying to do, it's okay to use them as examples of how to be. Lead with a highest common denominator ethic. Do not lead, do not coach with a lowest common denominator mentality, because that's loser mentality. You want to be good? Be more like this person, okay? And it's not just that you're playing favorites because you just like them. Oh, I like your haircut. Oh, I like the way you dress. No, that ain't the way it works unless the whole organization is having great haircuts and we want to have the best haircut organization in America. Well, then I guess maybe the quality of the haircut matters, but I don't know any of those. What I'm talking about is if this guy's 5 minutes early, if this guy nails every single workout to the T, as prescribed, without elongating rest, without cutting reps, without skipping workouts. If this person leads by example by bolstering teammates and cheering them on and lifting them up between reps during their recoveries. If this person is the one who helps unload the school bus or helps clean up after practice or helps be a voice of reason when maybe somebody's having a difficult time, that's a leader. That's somebody who should be emulated. That's somebody who should be cheered and celebrated. And it's okay to quote unquote play favorites to the degree that it's like, hey, yeah, you know what? I am going to, as a leader, invest a lot in people who care a lot. I'm going to invest a lot in people who want to work a lot. I'm going to invest a lot in people who have displayed that they have the moxie to be what it is that can hold this outfit together and help us get to that mountaintop that we have identified. If you do lowest common denominator coaching, if you do lowest common denominator leadership, you're simply going to keep the eagles down with the turkeys, and ain't nobody soaring. When you're down there with a bunch of turkeys, point to the eagles and you tell the turkeys, hey, let's maybe try to soar like the eagles. And here's 3 things that we can do. It's almost like putting somebody on a pip, right? Right? Hey, here's things we could do to get better. Follow little Johnny's lead. You know, follow little Michelle's lead, right? She's doing things the right way. She's achieving. She made all conference, all state. She made it to the national championships. She qualified for the Olympic trials. She hit her BQ or just PR'd, whatever it is, because of the adherence to process. Be willing to play favorites. It's okay. Because if you think about it, doesn't society play favorites? Think about it. Society does end up playing favorites. The world plays favorites, okay? The best, the boldest, the brightest, the most driven, they're the ones who end up becoming the favored sons. They end up becoming the daughters upon whom the light is shown. Do not get it twisted, and it's okay. It's okay to be performance driven. I'm a performance coach. Okay, it's okay to be performance driven, but do it with gratitude, do it with grace, do it with respect, do it with an eye toward trying to be as fair as possible, and you're going to be okay. You got to be real careful here with this one, and people are going to go, "What?" I mean, I could just hear the needle scratching across the record. Be willing to blame people for their failures. And you don't have to take responsibility for everybody's failures, although you should always be willing to. Listen to what I'm saying. Always be willing to turn the lens at yourself. Man, I beat myself up after the Chicago Marathon. I had some people that ran absolutely amazing, right? And I had some people who came up short of their goals. And I lost sleep. I hemmed. I hawed. I was wringing my hands going, what went wrong? Enough weight work? Did I address fueling enough? Did we do enough long tempo runs? Was our repeat work wrong for this person? And then the other people, who may have just run out of their minds, it's like, hey, everything was unbelievable. And there's like the fueling work, coach, the repeat work had me right where I wanted to be. We did the perfect amount of marathon pace work during long run workouts, 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks out, blah, 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 blah. Always be willing. But if every I was dotted, every T was crossed, your methodology has been peer reviewed, right? By people saying, hey, this has worked in the past. It's been working for not just your runners, but other people's runners, coached by other people. It's hard to really see here. Then you have to say, well, you skipped 4 workouts. You never slept enough, even when you had the opportunity to. Now, obviously, so many people work so hard, you can't always sleep enough, and it has nothing to do with you being lazy, staying up too late, watching the Gold Girls reruns, right? But you didn't ever learn to fuel. You never showed up with a proper pair of shoes for speed days. You did not strength train once during this block. And I told you, fuel on these days. I want you to strength train on these days. We're going to have workouts on Wednesdays, and you skipped every other Wednesday for 2.5 months straight. So, what we like to do, and I referenced this in the very first podcast episode of this series, is at some point you have to be willing to say, hey, be able to blame me by doing every single thing that I told you to do, or be able to blame other people because you did your job and everybody else failed. That way we can do what we love to do these days, right? Which is go, I blame you, but do not come up short and expect a mentor or a coach or a mentee, right? When you were told and you were shown, you were provided the blueprint, you were provided the roadmap for success, and then choose to alter it. It's kind of like this. You get the perfect cake recipe. Don't change the amount of cocoa. Don't change the amount of flour. Don't change the amount of sugar in it, and then complain about the way the cake tastes, right? So be willing, if you're a leader, very tactfully, very, very carefully, be willing to say, hey, I'm not sure this one's on me. And that behavior, that decision hurt the team. We didn't win state because you stayed up all night drinking ice cold beer, jumping on the beds, right? It's okay to do that. It's all right to do that. But you got to be super, super careful, really careful. And it's those are some dangerous waters to wade in, because boy, I tell you what, you fall off that deep edge, and you don't have your floaters on, you're going down quick. It's okay to make it about you a little bit as a leader. Listen, man, they have CEO of the Year awards. They have the Southeast Conference Coach of the Year awards. They have the NCAA Women's Basketball, Coach of the Year award. They have these things for a reason, because they award leadership excellence, and understand that making it about you, not just go win a trophy, win an award, have the Associated Press name you Coach of the Year. Listen, that's not what it's about. That's a byproduct of your leadership. But be willing to make it about you, such that your mentees and the people underneath you say, wow, I see Coach making it about success. I will then understand that I'm meeting that energy by trying to be successful and making it about my success. Do not be late for practice. Do not care. Do not have a failure of effort. Do not have everybody underneath you seeing you be apathetic, and then you be surprised when people have bad work ethic, when people don't show up on time, and those people are apathetic. Make it about you. Make them seeing you be competitive, so they will be competitive. Let people see you trying to be a winner, so that they understand that the expectation is that they're going to be a winner. Because if you act like a loser, if you act apathetic, if you are low energy, if you are low passion, you're going to get apathetic, and you're going to get low passion at every nook and cranny of your company, your organization, of your team. And you want rot, absolute rot from the inside out, be a breeding ground for termites. Got it? It's going to be okay. We can all succeed if we make success, healthy competition, respectful competition, respectful peer pressure to do right, not to do wrong, or to be abusive, or to be super judgmental, or to be super flippantly dismissive of somebody's anxiety or things like that. That's not what I'm talking about, because all of that stuff needs to be taken into consideration. And that is, like the art. That's the art of leadership. That's the art of coaching that you can't go and teach. You can go to a USATF level 1 coaching course and get the 65-70% of the nuts and bolts. MBO2 is this, percentages of that, lactate threshold. You can learn all that. The other 30%, that's the art of coaching, which is the art of leadership, which is the art of team building. And it doesn't have to just be coaching in sports or running. It can be leading a supplement company. It can be being the managing partner of an accounting firm. Last thing you got to do is establish culture. And all the stuff preceding to this has been the establishment of culture. All of the stuff, for lack of a better way of putting it, that I'm talking about is talking about establishing the culture. What are the expectations? Be willing sometimes to make some decisions that everybody doesn't like. Admittedly, one of my, I wouldn't say toxic traits, but one of my challenges is I really, really want everybody to be happy. Listen, I do organized, paid, structured conflict as an attorney. Right? We have rules. We have you go first, you go second. You get to cross-examination only after direct examination. It's structured conflict, right? I don't lean into it. I don't love it. I don't enjoy drama. I don't enjoy, and I don't think most people just love going, ooh, a fight, a discord. I can't wait to weigh into that. This is going to be great. Listen, I don't love it, right? Try to avoid that as much as possible, but establish culture. Understand there's cultural norms in your company, on your team, in your group, right? Where you have identified the need, you have a hunger to address the need, okay? You have an air of credibility after the goals have been established. And so now you've got culture. Do we all dress the same on the bus? And do we all wear the same stuff when we warm up before races? Do we have team dinners 2 nights before every big race? Do we have a culture of clapping and cheering for everybody in the room when they're succeeding? Do we have a culture of negativity? Do we have a culture of jealousy? Do we have a culture of simmering, sort of insidious negativism that can just metastasize? You got to maintain your culture. You've got to have people who understand that there's buy-in. I'm bought into the goal. I'm bought into the mountaintop. I'm bought into getting onto a flatbed, and I'm bought into getting on the road to excellence and achievement. If you establish your culture, and it's a culture of excellence in reverence for achievement, and identifying exactly what achievement means for each individual within the context of your organization, within the context of your team, you might be able to get 10 people in the next Olympic trials versus 5 like we had in 2024. You might be able to go and break the state record because you broke the district record the week before or the year before. Everybody who understands the culture, who has cultural buy-in, and understanding that there will be consequences if they do not, maybe not arbitrary like punishment, like go sit in the corner, but maybe the consequences of them not being a valued member of the team, them being a valued, cherished, sort of a revered member of this machine of success and achievement. Those are sort of the consequences of not having cultural buy-in, right? And then eventually, unfortunately, sometimes expulsion from the team. Expulsion or termination from employment if it's a company or organization, right? Those are the consequences of failure to respect culture and have buy-in for the culture. Healthy culture needs to be healthy culture, right? You can't have a team where eating disorders are proliferating and tolerated and frankly caused by failed leadership. I've seen it a lot. I'm going to call it like it is. All right. You cannot have a culture of deceitfulness and sort of low-level satisfaction when you see a teammate fail because somehow their success impinges on your success. Somehow their shine is a cloud on you. You can't have that kind of culture. So establish that, hey, rising tide raises all boats. Everybody individually needs to succeed, and everybody who is succeeding better be being cheered on by everybody else in the room. Here's one thing I know. And I'm going to credit my wife, Angelique, with this one. She always said, people always like to say, you know who your friends are. You know who your good teammates are when things are going badly because they're going to be there for you and they're going to pick you up. That can be true, obviously, in a lot of instances. Look around the room and ask yourself, who is clapping when you succeed? Identify those people and realize those are your people. Those are the people who celebrate your success even if they aren't having success. Those are the entities that cheer you on and celebrate your achievement even if they are stuck in a rut of mundanity, if they're stuck in a rut of meh, for lack of a better way of putting it. Or maybe they're high achieving too. And they're cheering for you because they recognize that there's still room on the flatbed truck of success all the way up to the mountaintop if they're succeeding and you're succeeding. Look around the room. Look around your organization. Look around your friend groups. Look around everywhere you are and ask yourself, why did I just have the greatest moment of my career or of my life, or just have a great moment that day, and I'm getting maybe something a little bit negative? Ask yourself that, because within an organization, we can all succeed, and each individual can have their own little pillar of success within a giant Parthenon of achievement. Project outwardly what you have internally. If somebody says, well, is that person really as good as what they appear to be? Please let the answer be yes most of the time. No, listen, we all have bad days. That's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm saying is if you appear cheerful, exuberant, uplifting, and giving, be cheerful, exuberant, uplifting, and giving in a one-on-one conversation when there's no camera and there's no recording ever there. If your organization appears to be well-oiled, put together, high-achieving, respectful, admirable, make sure that within closed doors or behind closed doors within a room, there is that same level of put-togetherness, respect, organization. Because we live in a windshield wiper world, right? Just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right? Make sure that you're not just the windshield wipers, right, on a window of negativity. So what I'm telling you is this: make sure that what you project, the energy that you give off, make sure that the image that you portray isn't fake. Flat out, it's okay to literally project, and I think it is almost paramount, and I believe that it is preferable to the alternative. The image that you project should mostly be how your culture actually really is. Now, listen, I mean, sometimes you can get a guy that comes across grumpy at a press conference, and people say, oh, that's kind of really just an act. This guy is a lovable, huggable soul, and everybody loves him. I mean, listen, I get that, right? But if you come across as a organization or a team of discord, of tumult, of negativity, of bad energy, of spitefulness, then that's probably what might be going on internally. And that's, you got to make sure that you do what I refer to as control the narrative. Control the narrative in a way that allows your organization to be respected. And it has to start with self-respect, self-love internally, culturally, and that's should be paramount when it comes to sort of fostering this. That should be fostered on the front end. As an athlete, I had buy-in when I went to college. I was recruited to go run at Baylor University coming out of high school, and I chose to go run at Baylor because of the team culture. I went to go run at Baylor because of the opportunity that I perceived for success. I went to go run at Baylor because I liked what I saw, and then also I had family members who went to Baylor, right? And so then when I got there, I bought into the team culture, which was, we're going to get up, we're going to run every morning, then we're going to go run it, we're going to go run at night, we're going to run twice a day, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And it was the culture, it was the expectation, and I stepped in as a freshman, and I was completely, wholly invested in what the guys who came before me, the Tyler Coopers of this world, right, who did it well. So as an athlete, I had the opportunity to run for a team that won a conference championship, and we told coach our goal was to make it to the NCAA championships, right, for the first time ever as a team, and we achieved that in the fall of 1994. And it was a level of self-actualization, and it was a level of personal satisfaction for me achieved within the team construct that has stayed with me forever because it was sort of that moment when I realized I'm super proud of me. And I'm super proud of me because I'm super proud of us, my buddies, my best friends to this day, guys who we had some brutal workouts. We had some crazy races. We had some brutal sessions, brutal weeks, uplifting weeks, enjoyable weeks, just incredible moments. You achieve those by you being your best, by buying into culture, understanding what the goal is, stating what the goal is, and then having great leadership. Steve Gully is one of the best coaches in the NCAA to this day and has gone on and coached multiple NCAA champions, right? And so when you look at that as an athlete, I was able to go, okay, Baylor feels the need. I have a thirst for excellence. Coach and my teammates, when I got there, we identified what the goal was, which was win conference, run, qualify for the NCAA championships, finish as high as we can there. Then there was definitely the air of competence. There was definitely the air of credibility going in to a coaching staff that clearly had their ducks in a row and understood how to coach it up. And then I bought into the culture, right, of what it was that it was to be a member of that team. And then we achieved success. That's how it was done. So an athlete, you buy into those 5 pillars. As a coach or a leader, you have to understand that those are the 5 pillars and then go and get it done. Now listen, teamwork makes the dream work, we say. This rugged American individualism, this incredible sense of accomplishment, many times can happen when somebody goes it alone. But what we find in, I would say, a vast majority of cases, even in sports that individually recognize champions, tennis, swimming, running, within a team construct, those hard workouts are made a little bit more tolerable. Those amazing moments are made a little bit more amazing. Those contemplative moments, those soul-changing moments, those DNA-changing experiences happen collectively with people who are rowing in the same direction, who are as invested as you are in a common goal, and an incredible amount of satisfaction, an incredible amount of mental health can be achieved, an incredible amount of wealth and experience, an incredible amount of wealth that comes with the joy of camaraderie and collective achievement can all come with investment in the culture identified in organizations that will allow us to then be our best. And so what I want all of you to do is no matter where you are, if you're teaching at a school, if you're running on a cross-country team in high school and you're listening to this, if you're thinking about deciding where to sign a national letter of intent to go run in college, or if you are the managing partner of a fledgling law firm, think about these things and understand that we as animals, we as Homo sapiens have always organized ourselves very, very well into clans, communities, clubs, organizations, townships, villages. It's what we do. That's what we do. There's a reason why solitary confinement is what it is. We don't do great all the time alone. We do really, really well when we're trying to achieve great things by trying to be part of the rising tide that will raise all of the boats around us. So be thinking about that as you head on with the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and what you're doing. And I want all of you to go be good. But like I always like to say, guys, let's go be consistently good. Coach out.